Hello and welcome to another episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Microsoft Mentors is designed to lift the lid on the career journeys of the most successful leaders in the Microsoft ecosystem and to share their knowledge, insights, experience and expertise with the wider Microsoft community, offering mentorship at scale. Each week I'll be having open and honest conversations with technology leaders, business owners and technical experts from across the world of Microsoft tech and unpicking their past routes to success, their current models for personal and professional growth and advising you on how to develop the next steps of your cloud career. Stay tuned every week, every Wednesday at midday on LinkedIn Live and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Let's grow together. This week on Microsoft Mentors, the podcast, I am joined by Paul Bevis. Paul is the CTO at FSP, who are a Microsoft partner and digital transformation consultancy that works with enterprise organisations to drive change and transformation across Azure, Microsoft Modern Work, cybersecurity and data and AI. In my conversation with Paul, we start right at the start of his journey, his spark into IT founded in his ICT A-levels, through his graduate programme at the House of Fraser, his life as a developer and SharePoint architect, and ultimately to his current role now as CTO at FSP. We talk about some of the core Microsoft technology trends that Paul and his team at FSP are using to help their customers achieve real business outcomes. And we dive a little bit deeper into some of Paul's wider reaching responsibilities, including his position on Tech UK's cloud steering committee, as well as his thoughts and advice for anyone looking to grow their Microsoft cloud career right now. It's a brilliant episode. I hope you enjoy it. We're going to dive straight in now to myself and Paul Bevis. Hello and welcome to Microsoft Mentors. I've already done a little preamble in terms of what this episode is going to be about, but Paul, welcome.
Hey Ollie, good to be here.
Thanks very much for taking the time to come and join us. As I said in the preamble, Paul is the CTO at FSP. They are a Microsoft partner and a solutions partner across a number of Microsoft core designations. And as is always the way with these episodes of Microsoft Mentors, this is all about just getting a bit of a feel for Paul's background and his journey in the Microsoft world and what that meant to him earlier in his career and what that looks like moving forward. So, Paul, let's dive straight into it.
Let's go for it.
So I like to go very Stephen Bartlett and go all the way back to your sort of early days and even sort of pre-career. What was your tech entry? Were you the sort of person that was building PCs in your bedroom, coding away? Where did it all sort of start for you, Paul?
Yeah, good question. No, I wasn't the sort of person that was breaking down PCs and putting them together when I was still in nappies or anything like that. I think the first PC was an Amiga 500 as a kid. That was mostly for playing games.
Yeah.
But I think tech particularly probably took off for me at college. I did an A-level, if that's kind of dating me, back in Salisbury, where I grew up, around information communication technology, ICT, and I had a really good tutor at the time, a lady called Chris Frankham, who just the way she explained things, the way she kind of spoke about it, about building applications, that's the bit that kind of took off for me at that point in time. So I would have been sort of 17, really. I mean, I like playing with computers, computer games, but I hadn't really kind of thought of myself as a technologist at the time.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. My wife's a secondary teacher. She works on the sort of sports and PE side of things, but it is amazing the impact that a good teacher, a good tutor that early on can have on someone, isn't it? It can almost just light a spark that you didn't even know is there, and you go, actually, I really get this, and they're really getting me involved with it, and all of a sudden it then becomes a passion.
Absolutely, yeah. I think back at that sort of age, the thing for me, I was going to go join the Royal Marines. That was what I was going to do. Be an officer in the Royal Marines. And I went to a careers office and they'd said, right, you want to be an officer, you're going to need a degree. So I was like, okay, well, I got to get a degree. And it didn't really matter what degree I had as long as I had a degree. And it was just like, well, I quite like playing about with computers and using them, so that's fine. Let's kind of do something in that space. And then as I kind of progressed, it was like, oh, actually, I quite like this. And then from college into uni, and ultimately the rest is history.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. So post that sort of initial spark at A level, that then moved through into university. So was that a computer science degree? What did that degree course look like?
Yeah, I did a degree in computing or computer science when I was at Bournemouth University. And I took a gap year after college because I just decided I wanted a break before I went to university. But I did find out before I started what would be a sensible book to kind of read to get up to speed, and it was a book on C programming. So that was my first kind of real, I'd say, hardcore programming. Up until that point, it'd been sort of access databases building at college, but then and a bit of Pascal actually. But yeah, up and then it was C, and it was suddenly like, actually, wow, the sort of classic Hello World type program was like, oh, actually, this is quite cool. And it kind of it grew from there. And then started the first year of university and was just like, look, I really want to make a go at this. And as I kind of got to know more, and that idea of joining the Royal Marines, it was suddenly like, hang on a minute. Yeah, I quite enjoy this, and I don't need to get shot at. So there we go.
Yeah, I mean, you can, like I said, you can do IT in the armed forces, can't you? But you've always got the risk of trying to put up a telecoms antenna or set up a server in some base where you're potentially going to get shot at as well. So yeah, doing it in the comfort of old Blighty sounds much nicer.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then post uni, that then transition into the real world, the world of work. What did that look like for you?
Well, my course, I'm really passionate about these now, but I did essentially a sandwich course. So I did 2 years of my degree, then I went and spent a year working in industry, and then went back to uni for the final year. So my first job was actually working for House of Fraser. I worked in their IT department, which is based in Swindon, where I now live. And that was massive. I did 2 years, obviously, learning at university and university life, and that was great. And then I went and actually did some real work and learned an awful lot just in that 1 year. And then I was fortunate enough to be sponsored by them to go back to university. So kind of gave me a bit of pocket money when I went back to university for the final year. And then I went back to work for them for several years afterwards. And that was my first job, basically as a database developer. They were predominantly an Oracle organization, using Oracle databases and Oracle forms and Oracle products. And more towards the end of my time there, they started moving in the Microsoft direction, which is when I first started getting into the Microsoft world.
Yeah. Okay. And how is that that final year back at uni after you'd gone and got the taste of sort of the working world and then going back into uni life? How was that last year? Because I know a few people that have struggled with that after they've done a sandwich. It's like they get a taste for it, and then actually it's like, I could just be back at work rather than having to do assignments.
Yeah, I think I wanted the qualification, and part of it was I was getting paid to go back to university on the condition that I came out with a qualification. And it made me realise that the application of some of these things is the most important piece. Yes, you can learn all the theory, which is good, but it's how is that technology actually going to be applied? How is it going to be used? And the practicalities are using it in the real world rather than just kind of the theoretical piece. So, and it made me appreciate things a little bit more in the final year. I mean, the final year is quite good in the sense you get to pick your own modules, so you can kind of choose what you actually want to look at. So I think the year in industry really made me or gave me a good view as to what I should be picking for the final year.
Yeah, definitely. And then, so you went over to House of Fraser, like you say, started on the Oracle side, then started feeding into the Microsoft world. Was there a point where you started to either sort of choose to or had to make career decisions to say, actually, I'm going to start to specialize a little bit more and start really pushing down that Microsoft track? Was there a sort of a fork in the roads at all?
Yeah, not at House of Fraser. I made the decision to move on. Part of that decision was driven through the type of the organisation. At the end of the day, I'm working in an internal IT department of a retail company, which is in effect, in most organisations of that type, it's a cost centre.
Yeah.
And I decided I wanted to kind of try my hand at a product company. So I then moved on to a company that specialised that were working with Microsoft technology, because I'd had the experience of working very much as that database backend, Oracle initially, but then SQL Server, and then started moving up the stack into middleware and ASP.NET, web forms as it was for some of the front end stuff. And then decided I actually quite like this stuff. I think the database, I'm forever grateful for that, because I think that grounding in kind of database design, query optimization, really kind of thinking about the data structure, that was really valuable. But then you kind of started moving up the stack and, like I say, moving into the Microsoft world, which I enjoyed more at the time, because I think it was something new and exciting, and I got to then go and work on a product that was all Microsoft.
Yeah. So that was much for you. It was on that, as you went up that sort of trajectory, it was on that sort of development side of things. So building out products
very much
through
software development. Yeah, the next job was the tech stack. There was a SharePoint underlying platform, and with bespoke customizations on front of it. It was actually working as a learning management system, so deployed out to schools all around the country. So I think at the time it was the largest deployment of SharePoint in the world. So kind of SaaS and cloud before that's what it was actually called. But that was awesome, because it was working at scale, and it was working with SharePoint, which I've come to work with a lot over my career, so it's always got a soft spot in my heart. But yeah, we were building and customizing on top of SharePoint.
Cool. And in that sort of first part of your career journey, were there any people that were sort of mentors that stood out to you, that really sort of supported you through those sort of early parts of your careers, whether it's, the first roles or through those first career moves?
Yeah, I several people, particularly at House of Fraser, took me under their wing whilst I was there, and that was again, forever grateful for those guys. A chap called John McEwen and a lady called Simone Wilcox, who I still remember the interview I had with them, which was my first proper job, and I managed to make it through that. So they were really supportive throughout, and I think they had a pretty good they had a very good graduate scheme or internship scheme, and used to take on sort of 15 to 20 people a year across the whole of their IT team. That was awesome. And then Andrew Bond, who was the kind of leader of the development team at the time, and I think he's now a CTO at Oracle. Those guys were really supportive, and I learned a lot. Matt Nunn, who was my mentor and kind of support guy during my internship, all of them were really important to allowing me to be successful in that first role. And that kind of almost spurred me on, because there was such a talented bunch when you kind of look back, for like I say, an internal IT team at a retail company is not necessarily the organization that you think to find that sort of talent, but it's only through the benefit of hindsight that you realize what was there.
No, definitely. And I think even more so now, within some of the larger retailers, there are some incredible people on the technology side of things, because ultimately a lot of retail now is digital, isn't it? You've only got to look at the big players in the space, Next and ASOS, for example. They've all got massive commitments and spend in Azure on Microsoft Cloud, because they're digital businesses. Although some of them have still got traditional bricks and mortar retail, a lot of it is done online now.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's changed a lot, and that they deal with fine margins, and innovation is key. I still think there are retailers that perhaps aren't so modern and innovative in that sense, but they tend to focus in other areas, maybe on experience, for example. But yeah, I think that was a kind of a bit of an eye opener for me. And I think ultimately, I think I've been fortunate throughout the career that I've worked in some great places with some great people and some great managers. So I count myself very fortunate in that sense, because I know there's a lot of people that haven't been as lucky as I have in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And have there ever been any sort of career barriers that you've hit, or points in your career where you've gone, I just don't know whether I'm doing the right thing, or I don't know whether or what direction to go? And have you ever sort of hit that crossroads or barrier where you've had to make a key decision, you've not really known how to approach it?
Well, I think again, probably coming back to feeling rather fortunate. I'm a white male. I haven't experienced the same sort of discrimination as other people have. I have had the good fortune to work in some great organisations. So that's been, I am thankful for that. Biggest challenges really have been, the what next. I've always been, I love learning. I like trying out new things and playing with stuff. That's great. And I think at the point in time where you feel as though you're not learning anymore, or you're kind of starting to solve the same problems again and again, and it doesn't feel fresh, that's kind of the point in time where you think, well, we need to change things up in some way, shape, or form. And I've like I say, made the decision to move on from that internal IT department to a product company to experience that aspect. And then after working in that product company for a number of years, really enjoyed it, but then decided I feel I need to specialize more. Felt as though I was being a bit of a jack of all trades. I knew a little bit of SharePoint, I knew a little bit of front end technology, I knew a little bit of C# in the back end middleware, and it was suddenly like, well, where is my specialism? And that's the point in time that I decided to join FSP, where I am now. And back at the time when it was it was predominantly a SharePoint based consultancy. I'd made the decision that SharePoint was as an up and coming product of Microsoft, and I felt that was going places, and I was going to go and specialize in that. Became a SharePoint architect, and that for me was a big thing. And I remember having conversations with a few friends at the time, just thinking I'm feeling like I am a jack of all trades, and I felt to progress I really needed to specialize.
Yeah, and I think it's a typical journey that people go on, especially in the technology space, whether they've come through sort of the development route like you've done, or if they're on the infrastructure track and they've come through that sort of support function and go through first, second, third line, and then start doing a bit of project engineering. At some point, a lot of people go to get that real sort of next chunky challenge. I need to specialize, and I need to sort of go into an environment that allows me to specialize and do that. So you land at FSP. So originally then that was focused on, by the sounds of it, being a bit more involved as an architect. So was that sort of a customer facing role where you're going out and scoping and designing solutions and then deploying them for customers? What did that look like?
Absolutely, just that, and then now more of the same. So again, it's probably a different type of organization, from that internal IT function to working on a product, and then moving into the consultancy world, which is, you are very upfront with working in front of the clients, design, on the advisory side of things from a strategy perspective, but then moving through to architecture and design and development and ultimately operation and support of these things. So you're kind of going through the whole range of things, but it is very much customer facing in that sense.
Yeah. And for you, when did the sort of transition more into that technology leader start happening for you at FSP and sort of towards your current role?
Yeah, so when I joined FSP, it was a very small company based in a small barn just outside of Newbury in the south of
Yeah.
England, and yeah, it's as the company grew, we slowly matured as an organization and broadened out the sorts of services we're offering from being that pure play SharePoint technology partner into a much broader Microsoft and beyond digital transformation consultancy. And so
Yeah.
I've kind of grown with the organization and taken on some leadership roles as we've gone from leading teams of engineers to architects to more broader consultants into my current role as CTO.
Yeah. Yeah. So as a business as a whole, then it's broadened out, like you say, from being more SharePoint focused and now operates as a digital transformation partner. So for you guys, I guess that covers sort of the key Microsoft solution areas you're doing Azure transformation, sort of broader modern work outside of SharePoint through into data and AI and things, is it?
All the Microsoft designations as they are
Yeah.
now called. Yeah. So yeah, we're a digital transformation consultancy. I've been here now for coming up 13 years, as it will be in September, which sounds scary when I say it out loud. But yeah, we've grown and matured as following Microsoft really, back from the the SharePoint days where everything was on-prem, followed them then into the cloud, SharePoint Online and Office 365 and then M365. But now we do all of the designates, all of the major cloud products that Microsoft provides, we can support clients with. But also into the non-technical side. So from a delivery management perspective or a business strategy, business analysis, product management. So really trying to help organizations on that sort of digital transformation journey, so to speak, be it from a relatively small scale targeted, we're going to transform a particular application and port it from an on-prem app into a cloud native app running in Azure, all the way through to full-scale organizational transformation, working with organizations across sectors, some of them 60,000, 100,000 strong, and everything in between. So a real broad spectrum of types of organizations and types of problems, really.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely the way the consultancy market is going and has been going, isn't it? I think technology transformation is one piece. Sometimes it's probably the easy piece. You go in, you scope it, you go, right, you've got this problem, we know the solution for it, and we have to go through X, Y, and Z phases to get to the outcome at the end of it. But when you're looking at a more holistic approach and you've got the business transformation, you've got the skills transformation that needs to come alongside that, changing mindsets, especially if you're moving away from, like say, legacy monolithic applications towards microservices in Azure. That business change stuff is probably the most difficult part, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's all in, ultimately, all these transformation programs are in service of some kind of business outcome. There's
Yeah.
an objective the organization has. We want to get better at something or improve revenue or reduce costs or improve service, whatever it turns out to be, there's some business objective behind it. I think sometimes technologists may forget some of that and like playing with cool technology, which is great and it's fantastic trying to use some of the new stuff in new ways, but it's all got to be driven through some outcome, and it's no good if no one uses it. So you're right, you do need to be able to kind of win hearts and minds of how do we actually use this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And as a team, and you're always going to be led by where the customer needs is. But as a business at FSP, how do you guys sort of measure your own success? Is it around, innovation of new products or services? Is it, increasing ROI or reducing spend for customers? Where are your sort of key targets that you try to, as a business, what you try to deliver generally?
Yeah, I guess it's a broad spectrum really of all of the above. You know, our measure of are we doing well is the standard client satisfaction. That's a measure. There's both a quantitative aspect to that, so you can do this, the classic net promoter score question. But there's also a qualitative. How does it actually feel? There's no substitute for just flat outright asking the clients how do they feel about the delivery and the experience they're getting from us. But yeah, the key thing that we're hearing again and again right now is productivity. And I think that's true at a national level. The government talks about wanting to improve productivity and get the economy moving. Organizations are wanting the same. Alongside that, there's a level of risk management. So what can they do to minimize their risk? So we're certainly seeing a lot for that coming through in our cybersecurity division. And obviously the recent issues with CrowdStrike, and that's highlighted that there is a bit of a productivity is good, but if you don't have any systems to work on, your productivity is going to sink. So there is definitely a level of that. But we're also seeing quite a lot of organizations also talking about innovation. And then there's a bit of work to do there in terms of, well, what do they actually mean by innovation? But I think all organizations want to be innovative in some way and stay relevant and stay current. For some people, that's just what you might describe as continuous improvement and minor incremental improvements to improve efficiency, but it can also be more wholesale disruptive change. So, and technology is obviously an enabler for that. It's not the only way of doing innovation, but it's certainly a common way of doing it.
No, absolutely. And I think especially with where we're at in technology development and AI, where it is now and what AI will look like round the corner, I think that's a lot of people's sort of hopeful silver bullet to productivity, isn't it? It's, well, we'll just get a load of AI in and productivity will skyrocket because it will help us do everything. But there's a lot in between the sort of the idea of what AI could get you and actually the successful implementation of that to increase productivity. And there's so much behind the scenes to be able to enable that.
Yeah, we just don't see that many organizations having figured out the secret sauce, which is ultimately, it's how do you exploit these things? So, as you say, just chucking AI at something isn't going to solve many problems. You've got to figure out what is the problem in the first place and then figure out a sensible way to try to exploit it. AI is obviously the technology du jour. It's the buzzword, but I suspect in the coming years it's just going to become a technology. Yes, it's general purpose and permeates through everything, but like any other technology, it's finding out the right use case for it in the first place, not just let's pin our hopes on AI solving everything.
Yeah, and for me, I think it mirrors the early days of public cloud, doesn't it? Where everyone went, oh my God, we don't have to have servers anymore. We can just throw it all into Azure or AWS. But actually, again, there's got to be a use case for it. There's got to be a rationale behind it because it's not always the best solution for all businesses.
Yeah, and you've got to find a way of trying it and experimenting with it, and that's something that we would advocate in terms of what's the outlet for these things. How do you try new technology? If your technology teams are all busy doing the day job and building these enterprise applications for you and keeping everything running, where's the outlet to try new things in a safe space? Because that's you can't guarantee success. If you're trying new things and you're innovating, sometimes it's not going to work. So having that safe space to try things like an AI-based solution, which might be a good thing, but at least you'll try it and figure out, did that work or not? If it doesn't work, well, you'll still have learned something from it. And
Yeah.
that iterative approach, experimental approach, is something that we would advocate to all of our clients. Is how do you do that? And some people can, there's varying degrees of maturity and scale at which that needs to happen, depending on the organization. But having the outlet in the first place is pretty key.
Yeah, absolutely. And for yourself as well, so you're already also part of the Tech UK Cloud Leadership Committee. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
I'm fairly new to that. I only came across it when I started sort of looking at yourself and your background. So it'd be good to hear from your side in terms of what that committee's purpose is, and I guess how you're involved with it, and how that sort of feeds into your working life.
Yeah, so Tech UK is a trade association representing all different types of organizations, from the big cloud vendors to consultancies such as FSP to all sorts of businesses, different shapes and sizes. So, and by joining Tech UK, you can kind of get access to some of the information. You can join some of the working groups.
Yeah.
And the Cloud Leadership Committee is open to people that are using the cloud and some kind of senior position. And then it's essentially helping to direct part of Tech UK's publications and other working groups and what's the areas of focus. And so Tech UK have associations with the government, so they can kind of influence things in that sense, but also kind of get a feed in from the government. So the committee is deciding on what's the priorities for Tech UK at the moment and where to focus in on, and then kind of getting feeds in from various different sources that come along to our committee meetings and present on what's the latest goings on. So last time we had a talk from the Competition Markets Authority, who are doing an investigation into the cloud marketplace to see whether or not that's competitive, and that's ultimately a fairly focused investigation and targeting, as it turns out, predominantly the infrastructure as a service world. But that was really interesting to kind of get their input there and kind of get direct and have the opportunity to contribute and feedback on their initial findings. So it's very much just what's the hoping to influence the direction of some of the cloud thinking across organizations.
Yeah, and I think it's so important, isn't it? Because if you don't have committees or organizations or communities like that, the knowledge base can end up siloed within organizations, can't it? So to have that sort of collective mind, and the fact that it feeds up and ultimately has the ability to influence policy as well. And I think, again, going back to the AI side of things, I think we'll see definitely more involvement from governments across the world in terms of technology policy and what that looks like for AI in the future. Sounds like a really interesting initiative to be involved with.
It's cool to see what they've got to say, and like I say, the opportunity to contribute has been really valuable, and hear and see and learn from other people along the way. So it's, as you say, it's about sharing ideas and not making everybody's grappling with this stuff all in our own unique ways, in our own kind of individual kind of contexts. But there's a lot of shared knowledge out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess now that you've sort of progressed through your career and you're where you're at now as CTO at FSP, obviously over that sort of course of being in those leadership roles, you'll have developed your own sort of leadership style. I guess if you were going to try and sort of pin down exactly what your leadership style is or looks like, have you ever thought about that?
try not to think about it too much. Yeah, I think I've always been pretty collaborative. I like to involve people in the conversation and build a bit of consensus. But I also like to crack on and get stuff done. So sometimes there's I'm just going to do this, and other people will follow. So I think there's never a one size fits all to these things. That's definitely something that I've learned along the way. Is sometimes building consensus takes too long. You need to move quicker. So sometimes it's better to seek forgiveness than ask permission, or you just don't need to bring as many people along with you on the journey initially, so you can just crack on. But yeah, I wouldn't say I was authoritarian. Much more about hopefully there's an element of inspirational. Let's just crack on and get going. But I also like to think that I do and try to involve other people along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think for me, I've always, in terms of leaders that I like to follow, it's people that are doing it, are walking the walk as well as talking the talk. And for me, I think that's, as a team member, the type of leader that you want to really get behind, because you can go, well, Paul's cracking on and getting it done, so we best get on the train with him, otherwise we're going to get left behind.
Well, that'd be nice, yes.
Yeah. And what about in terms of growing and mentoring talent at FSP? What's your sort of model for that in terms of, earlier careers and also people that have more experience, but making sure that they're still sort of continually learning and developing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I'm a big believer that if you want to learn something, then you'll do it. You've got to be interested and motivated to do it. I don't think that teaching is necessarily something that's kind of done to you. The good teachers are the ones that make it interesting and make it, inspiring for you to do it. So I think it's about trying to find the right sorts of things for people. So we encourage people to take control of their own progression. So define what does good look like for individuals, and work it through from there. So it's not about your particular job role, therefore you have to do X, Y, Z in terms of training courses. It's much more about, well, what's interesting for you. Now there are certain roles, obviously more on the technological side in the Microsoft world, where there are certifications, and they're beneficial from us as a solution designate for Microsoft. We need certain people, a certain number of people to have passed certifications, so that's a benefit to FSP as a company, but it's also a benefit to the individual that's on their CV. And I think these days, some of those exams or certifications that you can get are actually pretty good. And you have to, I think, gone are the days where it's just go and, download a dump file from somewhere and you can kind of pass the questions. There's a little bit more thought to it now. Some of the exams are more practical, hands-on, and that puts a bit more credibility for somebody who's got those certifications. So we encourage everybody to be working towards them. It's not a mandatory. We're not forcing people to do it, but genuinely believe it's good. But ultimately, I've worked, like I say, I've worked in some really supportive environments that have actively encouraged personal development and people to really tie their development to the aims of the organization, and even better if you can then tie that to the work that we're doing for a client. That sort of win-win-win. If the client benefits, FSP benefit, and you as an individual benefit because you're getting to try something new or learn along the way, that's the sort of thing that we're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think you're right with the Microsoft certification side of things. I think they, especially early on with Azure and all of their cloud products, I think they struggled to keep the certifications up to date. I remember there was times when it was the 7501 or whatever it was then, is that people were working in a certain way in live production environments, but the exams hadn't caught up, so they were having to relearn the old methods to pass the exam, but then use the current methods in the real world. Whereas I think
Yeah,
now with the sort of the AZ structure that they've got, and the fact that you have to renew it every year as well, because I think before they just lasted until the next exam came out, which was normally a few years down the line. So you could have
exactly.
done
It was one and
a
done. Yeah,
certain date in 2016 and not had to redo it until 2020, whereas now it's every year you've got to revalidate. If you want to keep your cert, you've got to revalidate. And I think, like you say, it gives a lot more credibility and strength to those Microsoft certifications now.
yeah, absolutely.
And how did FSP find the transition over to the new sort of Microsoft partner solution designation models away from the old sort of gold, silver status? Was that a fairly seamless transition? Was there quite a lot of work in the background to get that all sorted?
There was definitely quite a lot of work in the background to get that all sorted, and continues to be that sort of rolling nature. I mean, I understand why Microsoft have done it, and I don't disagree with it at all. I just think that there's definitely quite a lot of work that still needs to go on behind the background. And ultimately, Microsoft are a commercial organization, so they're trying to drive some revenue for themselves. That doesn't necessarily mean it's encouraging the right behaviors across those partners, because if the partners are incentivized to just drive revenue for Microsoft, that's not necessarily driving the right outcome for their clients. So I think we would always focus on what's the customer need. And so far we've been successful at that. And we're also maintaining those solution designates, but it's not the solution designate at be all and end all.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess as we move sort of towards the sort of the future, I know we've already spoken about sort of the AI side of things, but over the next sort of couple of years, where do you see sort of the core trends emerging within sort of the Microsoft technology landscape? Where do you see your customers sort of needing the most support or sort of the most demand for certain areas within Microsoft?
Yeah, and if I had a crystal ball, that would be amazing. But I think all of the major cloud platforms that they have, from M365 and D365 and Azure, you're expecting those to continue to grow and evolve. And I'm expecting organizations will mature the way they look after those platforms and treating them more like products than they perhaps have historically done, which has typically been treating them more like infrastructure and just keeping the lights on, recognizing that these things take quite a lot of looking after because of that evergreen nature of Microsoft continually dropping out new features. So you've got to be looking at the roadmaps and thinking about what's coming next. So I think that how do people manage those roadmaps and keep their platforms working well? Microsoft will keep them running and up, but it's are you making the best use of them in the right way? That's the key, going to be key thing. Obviously, AI is going to permeate everything to varying degrees, and I think that there's some exciting stuff that you can do these days, building in generative AI into custom apps. Things like OpenAI being available in Azure. Lots of organizations that are heavily Microsoft invested, like, we're not going to touch anything unless it's in Microsoft data centers, because that's just easier from a compliance perspective. Now that those services are there and accessible, and it's not just the OpenAI models, obviously Microsoft are making others available. I think that's quite cool. I think that data will continue. So the Microsoft Fabric is kind of gaining a lot of traction at the moment as that lightweight SaaS, if you will, data platform. So I think the capabilities there will probably mature, and that's right for a lot of organizations these days that aren't sort of huge, large-scale enterprises that don't necessarily want to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds building a data platform running in Azure. Well, you can get one running pretty quickly in Fabric for a lot less. So I think there's a reasonable amount of growth there. And I also think Microsoft is doing really well in the cybersecurity world at the moment. So as your Sentinel, we're seeing a lot of people wanting to kind of look at that, particularly for the cost model for it tends to be more on the consumption based, rather than perhaps some of the other products that tend to be more on a user license based. So often as not, Sentinel actually works out quite a bit cheaper. So we're kind of seeing across the spectrum there of a few different products. I'll probably be proved wrong, and there'll be some other things coming along as well. But
Yeah,
those are some of the things that we're seeing.
yeah, they'll come up with something that we've not even thought of or heard of yet, and it'll be the biggest thing ever, won't it?
Well, absolutely, yeah.
But no, definitely, and we see it on our side on sort of the demand for talent, cyber security in the Microsoft world. I think Microsoft, from where they were probably 3 or 4 years ago against the sort of big security cyber vendors to where they're at now, I mean, the pace at which they've been able to catch up is incredible, really. And like you say, tools like Sentinel and the wider Microsoft, Defender Suite, etc. If a business, like you say, is heavily invested in Microsoft and they're sort of Microsoft first, then historically where they would have had to go out to third-party solutions, they can go, oh great, well there's now a Microsoft cybersecurity solution in there. Yeah, let's pull that down off Marketplace and chuck it in with everything else.
It certainly makes it a lot easier for organizations. I mean, on the cybersecurity side, again, it's tech. So it's not going to be that great if it's not being used, and people are using Sentinel to ingest a load of information and then generate alerts when they think there might be threats. Well, that's no use if nobody's looking at those alerts. So you do need some kind of SOC, security operations center, kind of going around that, and then what's the service that you can do to deploy that. And for a lot of organizations, running a SOC is really expensive. But there's a risk in not doing so. So we're sort of seeing opportunities there in terms of, obviously FSP, but other organizations kind of providing that level of service to organizations that gives you kind of cover and ability to react to some of those events.
Yeah. The growth in sort of managed SOC services and managed SOC, demand for managed SOC engineers has been massive, and we've seen that over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. Really interesting career journey, Paul, all the way back from your ICT lessons at A level all the way through to the heady heights of CTO now at FSP and everything in between. So really interesting to hear more about your journey. And as I said to you, when we were sort of leading up for this, I think hopefully the purpose and the benefit of these podcasts will give people the ability that are at different phases of their career against where your career has gone, an ability to go, well, this is the direction that Paul went in, and this is the steps that he took, and the challenges and advantages he's seen by going down that track. So hopefully other people will get benefit from that. We're going to dive in now to Microsoft Mentors Quickfire Round. So I teed this up at the start with you. It's going to be 10 questions. It's going to be maximum 1 sentence answers from you, Paul. And it will be a mixture of work-related stuff and non-work-related stuff. So, are you ready?
Hopefully.
I need a little. I might have to get a little theme tune for this at some point.
Do I have a time limit?
No time limit unless you start taking too long.
And then I start waffling. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. But we'll try and keep it 1 sentence answers if we can. So first off, nice and easy. What's your favourite and least favourite film?
Ooh, favourite film. I love Lord of the Rings trilogy, so I don't know if I can get away with having all 3.
Yeah, you can have all 3. I'll give you
that. Least favourite. Oh gosh, I've seen some rubbish B-movie films, and I can't think of one off the top of my head. But yeah. Something that you gotta get to the end of it, you think, blimey, that was a waste of my. I'm never gonna get those 2 hours of my life back.
Yeah. We've all been there, haven't we? The next one. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I remember getting this from one of the founders at FSP. The more senior you get, the less black and white the world is. Everything just kind of gets grey. Figuring out what is the right problem to solve is the biggest skill that you can have, or the best skill that you can have. And that advice has stuck with me for a long time.
Yeah, I like it. Almost feels like one that you get on those plaques at D&M in a little photo frame.
Yeah.
Cool. Are there, or have you got any books that have significantly influenced your career, or tech books that you think, absolutely people should be reading these books?
Yeah, I really like Accelerate, which is I think the tagline is the science of lean software and DevOps. That's by Nicole Forsgren, Jez Humble, and Gene Kim. That, in terms of the research that they put in to define a set of good practices for software engineering, release processes, the whole 9 yards, that really changed my thinking in terms of software delivery. And it's not a tech book, but it's something I do recommend to a lot of people. Is a book called "Who Moved My Cheese." It's quite a unique. It's quite a unique title. So if you search for "Who Moved My Cheese," it's a bit of a parable about the importance of dealing with change. And I think that's such a key thing that we need in tech. Is things don't stay the same for forever. You've got to be adaptable.
Yeah, absolutely. And podcasts, apart from the world-renowned Microsoft Mentors, are there any podcasts that you listen to weekly, whether that's tech or non-tech? What you go-to podcasts?
Obviously, certainly from a tech perspective, I really like Hansel Minutes by Scott Hanselman. That's kind of normally got quite a lot of good, broad, wide variety of technology in it. And then outside of that, I'm also really into The Rest is Politics at the moment with Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart. So that's been good to find. Keep up to date with politics, both here in the UK and abroad.
Yeah, no, I'm a good listener of Rest of Politics. I think the thing I like about Rest of Politics is I feel like you can just dip in and out. If there's like something happened politically that you just want to get your head around a little bit, you can just chuck that on, listen to that episode, and then dive out again. You don't have to always be fully invested with all the noise that happens with everything that comes with the political world, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
What is one common mistake you see people making in their careers, and how do you think it could be avoided?
Focusing too much on the tech. I love tech. It's great. But focus on the user need, the problem, first and foremost, and make sure you always got that front and center. The technology helps you to solve the problem. The technology itself is not the be-all and end-all.
Yeah, no, I like it. It's Friday night, you've had a hard week at work, and you're ordering a takeaway. Do you go for Indian, Chinese, or chippy?
Ooh.
And what's your order?
I would probably go Chinese, and I'd probably go with something like chicken chow mein, sweet and sour chicken, and some spare ribs in there, and obviously the prawn crackers.
Yeah, no, like it. Pretty similar to mine. I think I would definitely have a bit of crispy shredded beef Cantonese style in there for a bit of spice.
Good choice.
But I'll definitely go Chinese over the other two as well. I do like a chippy, I do like an Indian, but I think if it's a Friday night, it's got to be Chinese. And then last one, what would you say for someone starting out now? They're right at the start of their tech career, IT career. They want to be Microsoft focused. Which track would you tell them to go down in terms of Microsoft tech if they're coming out of uni and going into something new? SharePoint.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's an interesting one. I think that right now, the world of cyber is very hot. So I think you're getting a lot of people in there. So that's probably quite congested at this stage. I think data is still a big one, because I don't think too many organizations have really figured out data yet, how to make the most out of it. So I would probably recommend the data track as things currently stand, but I don't think you can go too far wrong going down the application track, software development. That there is going to be a need for software engineers for a very long time to come. But the modern workplace track.
Made everything for us now, though, Paul.
Copilot, right? It's a Copilot. Yeah, so I think that's that the other tracks in terms of modern workplace track as well. I still think that all of those are really valid. But if you force me to push one, I'd probably go data right now.
Yeah, I think I would as well. I think data underpins everything, doesn't it? In terms of being able to drive really strong business outcomes. If a business can get on top of their data and then use all the other technologies around it to feed that data in, then that's where you start seeing real transformation. Awesome. Well, thanks very much for your time, Paul. Really enjoyed that. Some great answers on the quick fire round. I'm definitely going to think of putting. I might even find a little jingle to put underneath it when I go to do the editing. You'll see when we go in the edit. That's about it, really, mate. Unless there's anything else from you.
No, thanks very much, Ollie. Really enjoyed that. That was fun. And speak again soon.
You too. Catch you later.
Cheers. Bye.
Awesome.